This happened a few months ago. I'm 32 and have been a nursing assistant at New Hope Hospital for about 5 years. I usually work the night shift. The hospital is huge and kind of creepy at night. The fluorescent lights buzz and the smell of antiseptic hangs in the air. I still can't shake what happened. It started like any other shift. I did my rounds, checked on my patients, and made sure everything was in order. But right past room 302, I heard something strange. It was soft, like a cry. At first, I thought it was one of the patients. I stepped inside, but it was empty, just silence. A chill crept down my spine. I told myself I was just tired. The next few nights were the same. I heard those cries again, sometimes faint, sometimes desperate. I tried talking to the other nurses about it, but they just shrugged. "It's probably just the old building settling," one said, but I wasn't convinced. Then, on my third night shift, I got a call for a code blue in room 215. My heart raced as I rushed over. A nurse was already inside, and as I entered, I felt a cold draft. It was strange, because the heat was supposed to be on. I looked at the nurse, and she glanced back at me, wide-eyed. "Do you feel that?" she asked. I nodded, feeling uneasy. We worked quickly, but I caught something moving in the glass-paned doors. I turned, but there was nothing, just my reflection staring back at me. I pushed it aside, but the feeling that something was lurking didn't leave me. That night, the cries echoed louder, pulling me to room 302 again. I approached the door, my heart pounding. As I reached for the handle, it swung open on its own. The room was empty, but the cries grew louder, swirling around me. I felt a strange pull, like a figure was in my peripheral vision. Suddenly, the noise stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I felt cold, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned, half expecting someone behind me, but the corridor was empty. Then I heard it again, a whisper, "Help us." I spun back to the room, my heart racing. I couldn't see anyone, just shadows filling the space. My instinct shouted to leave, but something compelled me to stay. I stepped inside. The air felt heavy. I called out, "Hello?" No response. I felt my pulse quicken. I took a few steps further, and the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped, panic flooding me. In that moment, I was certain someone was there, watching. "Help us," I heard once more, clearer this time. The sound felt like it was coming from all around. "Who are you?" I asked, feeling foolish. No answer came, just the shadows stretching closer. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it. In that moment, I understood one thing. Something was very wrong at this hospital. I finally gathered my courage and opened the door. The cries faded, but I could still feel the weight of unseen eyes on me. I ran down the corridor, not looking back. I never felt safe in that hospital again.
The following night, as I prepared for my shift, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The familiar routine felt different now, heavy with anticipation. I entered the hospital, the fluorescent lights buzzing, but the whispers of room 302 still echoed in my mind. I told myself to focus. The first few hours were uneventful. I checked on patients and administered medication, but I remained jumpy. The cries from the other night had unnerved me, and I couldn't escape the image of shadows stretching toward me. I made it a point to avoid room 302, but curiosity clawed at me like a persistent itch. Halfway through my shift, just as I was about to embark on my rounds, the fire alarm suddenly blared. It felt like a scene from a horror movie. I rushed to the nursing station, where a few of my colleagues were gathered, their faces pale. "What's going on?" I asked, but no one had an answer. They were too busy looking around nervously. Power went out moments later, plunging the hospital into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting long, eerie shadows down the hallways. I clutched the counter, heart racing as I tried to steady my breathing. I reminded myself that I had been in the hospital during power outages before. This was just another headache. But then I heard it again. The whisper, "Help us," reverberated right outside the nursing station. My blood ran cold. I exchanged glances with my fellow nurses, and I could see that they heard it too. "What is that?" one of them whispered, her voice trembling. Without thinking, I stepped out into the corridor. The air was thick. I could almost taste the fear. The whispers directed me toward the left hallway, the one leading to room 302. Something irrational pulled me forward. I was terrified, but unable to resist. As I walked, I looked into the rooms I passed. Most were dark and quiet, but the feeling of being watched weighed on me. I reached for the door to room 302. It stood ajar, almost inviting. My hand trembled as I pushed it open. Inside, everything appeared unchanged. The bed was neatly made, the chair still tucked in the corner. But then I noticed it, a small flickering light in the far corner. As I approached, it illuminated an object lying on the ground, a small, tattered hospital wristband. I picked it up, and when I turned it over, the name sent chills down my spine. It was a name I recognized, a patient who had mysteriously disappeared months ago. My heart raced. I looked around, feeling the shadow of something cold and sinister loom over me. That's when I saw it, a figure forming at the foot of the bed. A woman, pale and translucent, her eyes hollow. She pointed toward me and whispered, "Help us." Panicking, I backed away, the wristband still clutched in my hand. The room felt suffocating, like it was closing in. I turned and ran, slamming the door behind me. I didn't stop until I reached the nursing station, breathless and panicked. "What happened?" one of the nurses, Helen, asked.
I didn't have an answer. Just the image of that woman burned into my memory. Who was she? And who else needed help? The shift dragged on, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The screams and whispers echoed in my mind. I knew deep down this was just the beginning. I stood at the nursing station, struggling to hide my panic. I felt everyone's eyes on me, but I didn't have words for what I had just seen. Helen looked worried, and I knew she wanted me to say something. I focused on the wristband in my hand instead, my sight blurring as I clutched it tighter. Then a light flickered back on, illuminating the terrified expressions around me. A calm settled at the nursing station, but a storm brewed inside me. The whispers had faded, but the memory of the woman lingered. I needed to know more about room 302 and its history, but I couldn't shake the fear that more than curiosity was drawing me back. "I'm going to check on patients," I said, trying to sound steady. I quickly slipped away from the group, clutching the wristband, its rough edges biting into my palm as I walked down the hallway. My first stop was 301, a patient recovering from surgery. Mr. Stevens was snoring softly, oblivious to my internal chaos. I breathed a little easier and moved on. Each room I passed felt like an untouched fortress, the inhabitants blissfully unaware of the horror I had encountered. But then I reached 302 again, and the air seemed to thicken like molasses. I stood outside the door, heart pounding. Maybe I could just peek inside, just for a moment. Curiosity clawed at me to know the truth about the woman and the wristband. I pushed the door open just enough to slip in. The room was dark, but the shadows felt familiar now. I stepped in cautiously, acutely aware of the oppressive silence. The same tidy bed and the same chair loomed in front of me. I turned my focus to the corner, where the dim light had flickered earlier, but found nothing there. Just emptiness. That was when I noticed something new. A file folder lay on the ground beside the bed, partially open. My heart raced. Why was it here?
I bent down to pick it up, glancing around the room as if expecting shadows to leap out at me. The folder was old and tattered, matching the wristband. As I flipped it open, I felt the weight of years pressing down on me. Inside were papers, medical records of the previous occupant. I recognized the name of the missing patient, Marilyn Green. I scanned the pages quickly, but my breath caught in my throat when I saw something alarming. There was a note, scribbled in the margins with a shaky hand. I can still hear them. Was this what the whispers were about? Were there more trapped souls? I slammed the folder shut, panic coursing through me again. I turned to leave, but froze. There was a faint whisper coming from behind me, softer this time, almost pleading. "Help us." I felt as if the walls were closing in, the dark overwhelming. I stumbled backward, clutching the folder and the wristband together like a lifeline. I needed to get out. Just then I heard footsteps in the hallway, paired with an unmistakable voice, Helen's. "Are you okay?" she called out, her tone thick with concern. I barely waved her off, darting back toward the door. I need to go," I gasped, shoving past her and rushing down the corridor, desperation fueling my every step. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of the nursing station again, breathing hard, my mind racing with questions. I had to find out more, but I also knew I was in deeper than I had planned. Would I truly uncover the horror hiding within those walls? As my coworkers returned to their duties, I glanced back toward room 302, the whispers still haunting my thoughts. I could feel something pulling me back. I had to confront this. I had to know who else shared Marilyn's fate. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread as I stood at the nursing station, my hands still trembling from what I had just experienced. My mind replayed the scene in room 302 again and again, especially the note. I can still hear them. It felt like a warning, but I had no one to share it with. Helen was at the desk, typing away, her back to me. I shifted uncomfortably, debating whether to tell her what I had found. But what could I say? I decided it was best to stay quiet for now. I needed clarity first. The minutes dragged on, each tick of the clock amplifying my anxiety. I refused to look at room 302 again. I focused on my duties, checking charts and answering calls, but the sense of something lurking never left me. After a few hours, my shift was almost over. I thought about how I could drive home and forget about the haunting whispers, the folder, and the wristband. But just as I was wrapping up my final notes, the lights flickered again. They dimmed slightly, then brightened, and the calm atmosphere turned tense once more. I glanced up, and a chill crept down my spine. The door to room 302 was ajar. I hadn't remembered it being open before. It felt like an invitation. Conflicted, I glanced at Helen, but she was engrossed in her work. I took a deep breath and walked toward the room, willing my legs to move. As I stepped closer, I heard it again, soft, almost like a lullaby. "Help us." It made my heart race. I hesitated, but something compelled me to push the door the rest of the way open. Inside, the light was dimmer than before, the shadows pooling ominously. I took a step forward, scanning the room. My eyes landed on the same empty chair. The bed remained untouched. But there was something different about the atmosphere. It felt heavier, as if it held secrets I wasn't meant to know. That's when I saw it. A figure sat in the corner, silhouetted against the wall, a faint outline barely visible in the gloom. My breath hitched. Who was it? Was this another patient, or something else entirely? I squinted, trying to make out more details, but fear rooted me in place. "Hello?" I managed to call out, my voice shaking. The figure didn't respond, but I noticed a shimmer in the air around them, like heat rising off pavement. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, brighter this time. The figure was gone. I blinked,
breathless, and felt a wave of cold wash over me. Desperate to escape, I backed up slowly, but the door closed with a soft click behind me, plunging me into darkness. Panic surged as I rattled the handle, but it was stuck. I pounded on it. "Let me out, please!" My voice broke, the words sounding helpless even to my own ears. Then I heard the whispers again, louder this time. "Help us! You can't leave!" My heart pounded as I felt the air grow thick with despair. I glanced around, searching for a way out. I was trapped in this nightmare, and with fear clawing at me, I didn't know what would happen next. I was about to scream again when I felt it, a sudden rush of air, as if a strong wind had swept through the room. My heart raced, but I froze, tension coiling in my stomach. The whispers stopped as abruptly as they had started, replaced by an eerie silence that felt heavy against my ears. Then, just beyond the shadows, I saw the chair move slightly. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The very same chair that had been empty moments before now had the faintest impression of someone sitting in it. My pulse pounded in my throat. I wished I could turn back time, to the moment before I had opened the door. "Help us," the voice came again, clear this time. It sounded desperate and tormented, clawing at the edges of my sanity. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling. There was no response, just the oppressive darkness closing in around me. I slammed my shoulder against the door, willing it to budge. "Please," I shouted, panic edging my voice. "Someone, let me out!" But nothing happened. The door remained unyielding, as if the room itself was determined to keep me inside. Suddenly, a soft squeaking sound floated through the silence. I whirled around, heart pounding, but saw nothing. The shadows twisted and morphed, creating shapes that teased my vision. I felt their eyes on me, hungry, pleading. Then there was the unmistakable sound of laughter. It was light, almost childlike, but it echoed with a sinister edge that made my skin crawl. I took a shaky step back, hitting the hard surface of the bed behind me. I nearly jumped. Something cold brushed against my arm. "Help us," came the voice again, stronger this time. It seemed to fill the entire room, echoing off the walls. I couldn't tell if it was coming from the shadows or if it was inside my head. Either way, it sent a paralyzing fear through me. My mind raced as I struggled to understand what was going on. Was this a prank? Had someone locked me in here as a cruel joke? But the urgency of the whisper sent chills down my spine. This was real. Desperation surged within me.
I needed to find a way out. I checked the window, praying it hadn't been locked. I felt the latch, and it gave way with a sharp click. Hope flickered briefly. I pushed the window open, gasping at the rush of cool night air. But my hope quickly faded as I looked down. The ground was 4 stories below. I would never survive that fall. My heart sank, but I couldn't just give up. Moving back to the door, I banged on it again, my fists hurting with every hit. "Someone, please!" I cried out. Suddenly, I heard a voice cutting through the tension. "You shouldn't have come in here." I spun around, and there in the shadows stood a figure, clearer now, eyes glowing faintly. They weren't just watching, it felt like they were waiting for something, and I was suddenly very aware that I was no longer alone. As I took a step back, ready to plead for my release, the figure spoke again. "It's time to choose." My thoughts raced. Choose what? Escape? Or something else entirely? Before I could respond, the lights flickered one last time, and then everything went dark. I stumbled, disoriented in the pitch black. My heart thundered against my ribs. The oppressive silence filled the room, but it was different now. I could feel a weight, like something was pressing against me, holding me still. I raised my hands in front of my face, desperate to find something to ground me. It felt like I was straining against a thick fog. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. The answer came not in words, but in a rush of cold breath against my ear. "Choose," the figure echoed, its voice chilling. I took a step back, trying to find the wall behind me, but I couldn't tell where it was. I was blind, trapped in an unknown space. Then, without warning, the lights flickered back on. My eyes blinked rapidly to adjust. The room returned, but it felt different. Shadows loomed larger, stretching grotesquely across the walls. The figure was gone, but my sense of dread remained. I searched for the door again, my fingers grazing the cool metal handle. Panic surged as it wouldn't budge. It hadn't even clicked. I yanked harder, but the door mocked me, standing firm. "Help us!" the voice echoed again, now around me, coming from every corner of the room. It wrapped around me, pulling me closer to despair. I sank to the floor, realizing I could feel the chill on my skin more clearly than before. I could hear the whispers of many, all trapped in their endless loop of need. I shut my eyes, breathing deeply to suppress the wave of fear threatening to take over. The heat of terror roared between my ears. I needed clarity, needed to understand more than just the desperate cries. I opened my eyes, forcing myself to take stock of the room. That's when I saw it. A glimmering object on the floor beneath the chair. It caught the light just enough to draw my attention. Hesitantly, I crawled toward it, my fingers trembling as I reached for the item. It felt smooth and cold beneath my touch. When I finally grasped it, I pulled it closer. It was a pendant, an old one, the kind you would find in an antique shop. The etching on the surface glowed faintly as I held it, pulsing in response to my heartbeat. It was beautiful, yet menacing. Suddenly, a rush of memories flooded my mind. Faces, places, echoes of laughter twisted into cries. The stories of despair resonated in my head. The weight of their anguish bore down on me. They weren't just voices, they were lives. I dropped the pendant, the sound of it clattering sharply against the floor, cutting through the whispering cries. My heart raced faster now, not just with fear, but with urgency. I needed to escape this room, but how? I could feel the darkness closing in again, a shroud of despair ready to engulf me. Then the door handle turned slowly. I jumped, eyes wide. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow sliver of light that sliced through the dark. There was a choice being made, and I had to act. Would I step through, or would I linger, haunted by what I had found? I pushed myself off the ground to reach the door, heart pounding. But just as I stepped toward the light, I heard a loud crash behind me. The shadows shifted again. Something was in the room with me. Something that was ready to claim me. I paused, fear gripping me tightly. I took a deep breath, my instinct screaming at me to flee, but my body wouldn't move. The door's light promised safety, but something heavy loomed behind me. The noise echoed, bouncing off the walls, a terrible reminder that I wasn't alone. "Just go," I whispered to myself, urging my feet toward the glow. But as I turned, I caught a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye. It flickered, a shadow that seemed to dance along the edges of the light. I hesitated, dread pooling in my stomach. "Help us!" came the voice again. This time it was desperate, a chorus of whispering souls overlapping in a panicked plea. The sound tugged at my heart, anchoring me in place. I flicked my gaze back to the door. Could I leave them? Would they even be free if I did? The pendant lay behind me, cold metal abandoned on the floor. Whatever power it held, I had felt its pull. Then I heard it again, the crash, this time closer, a thudding, lifeless sound that signaled whatever was in the dark was moving. I swiveled my head, trying to see into the blackness, but it consumed everything. I could see nothing but a swirling void. "Choose," the voice intoned once more, slower this time, echoing with a sickening familiarity. An icy shiver raced down my spine. I knew I had to make a choice, and fast. I could jump through the door and hope for the best, or confront the darkness behind me, the place that felt alive, as if breathing down my neck. "Who are you?" I called out into the abyss, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. Silence fell. The whispers faded, but the darkness seemed to thicken, pregnant with the unknown. "Choose," the voice intoned once more, slower this time, echoing with a sickening familiarity. An icy shiver raced down my spine. I knew I had to make a choice, and fast. I could jump through the door and hope for the best, or confront the darkness behind me, the place that felt alive, as if breathing down my neck. "Who are you?" I called out into the abyss, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. Silence fell. The whispers faded, but the darkness seemed to thicken, pregnant with the unknown.
As I reached for it, the whispers intensified. "No! Don't take it!" The chorus roared, panic erupting in the words. The air around me grew heavy, charged with foreboding. I hesitated for a moment, pulse pounding in my ears. What did it mean? What danger did they foresee? But before I could set it down, a presence suddenly enveloped me, cold and clammy. It felt like an icy hand gripping my heart. I gasped for air, struggling against the overwhelming sensation. "What do you want from me?" I cried out, trying to break free from its grip. The figure returned from the shadows, its ember-like eyes flashing as it stepped closer. "You are the key," it rasped, words twisting in the air. "Only you can decide." I felt the weight of its gaze on me, something dark and ancient held deep within. Behind me, the sorrowful cries reached another crescendo. They were close. I could almost feel their icy fingers brush against my skin, begging for release. I didn't know what differences my choice would make. My heart thumped wildly as the figure put its face closer to mine. "This is your chance," it taunted, its voice vibrating through me. "What will you do?" I clutched the pendant tighter, grappling with the storm brewing inside me. Then, through sheer will, I yelled, "If I help you, will you let them go?" The room fell quiet. It was as if time itself held its breath. Shadows danced around me, then faded, only leaving the figure's ember eyes staring into my soul. "Choose wisely," it hissed, before dissolving into the darkness. That's when I saw it. A flicker of a memory, a hidden truth just behind my mind. And I knew I was too deep into this now to turn back. I stumbled back, my breath quickening. The figure had disappeared, but the air still crackled with an unsettling presence. I was left alone with the whispering souls, circling around me like lost spirits adrift in a void. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the edge of something monumental, something twisted and dark. "There's got to be a way to help you," I whispered into the murky shadows, hoping for an answer. But all that followed was a silence that cradled the eerie whispers, leaving me stranded in a filled void. My hands trembled as I clutched the pendant, now burning against my skin. The whispers grew pause, almost as if they were listening, waiting. Suddenly, the pendant pulsed in my palm, sending a warm surge coursing through me. For a fleeting moment, clarity washed over the chaos. I could see flashes of the rooms where the souls were trapped, images of sterile beds and flickering lights, moments of sorrow and grief. Then it faded away,
leaving me gasping for more. What was this pendant? Was it the connection to these lost souls? The weight of the choice pressed harder on my mind. I felt eyes watching me again, and when I looked up, I noticed a new figure lurking at the edge of the darkness. It was another woman, dressed in a faded hospital gown, her eyes clouded with sorrow and fear.
"Please," she said, her voice trembling, "help us." Her pale hands reached out, fingers brushing against the air as if yearning to grasp something just out of reach. I could feel her desperation, mingled with the other voices echoing behind her. "What can I do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. As soon as I spoke, the whispers around me grew louder, a surge of tension rising in the chamber. The energy felt suffocating, yet electric, like a live wire begging for release. "Find the source," the woman said, urgency dawning in her tone. "It's in the old wing. It binds us here." The shadows behind her flickered, almost threatening to engulf her. Before I could respond, the room rocked as if struck by an invisible force. I stumbled, clutching the pendant like a lifeline. The woman's expression shifted to one of panic as the darkness surged toward us. "Go! You must hurry!" she screamed, as if she could sense the impending doom. Just then, a terrifying realization clawed at my mind. The hospital had been abandoned for years. What source could be drawing the spirits back? I took a step back, fighting against the instinct to flee. If I ran, would I be abandoning them? Would I be sealing their fate within this dark space forever? The thought gripped my heart, and I took a deep breath, determined. "I'm going," I said, the words escaping my lips with newfound resolve. But as I turned to take my first step toward the old wing, everything went dark. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, drowning me in panic. The pendant slipped from my grip, clattering against the floor, the glow extinguishing as shadows closed around me. With the last flicker of light fading, I thought I heard her voice again. "Don't leave us!" Then the whispers went silent. I awoke sprawled on the cold floor of the nursing station, the hospital buzzing back to life around me. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, almost welcoming me back from whatever nightmare I'd stumbled through. Confused, I pushed myself up, the familiar antiseptic scent wrapping around me, oddly comforting, yet fraught with dread. "Are you all right?" Helen's voice broke through the din, her brows knitted with concern. I glanced around at my colleagues, all focused on their screens, oblivious to the chaos I had just experienced. It felt surreal. "They are," I started to say, but the words clung to my throat. What had just happened? Had I truly stepped into another realm, or had it been a terrifying figment of my mind? I reached for the pendant, my fingers brushing the empty pocket where I had once clutched it tightly. It was gone, like the shadows that had infiltrated room 302. "I'm fine," I managed, forcing a smile. But the fear simmered beneath, lurking just out of sight. I avoided Helen's worried gaze and rose unsteadily, my legs shaking. "What's the code?" A voice suddenly pierced the air, a shout from one of the nurses on the phone. "Room 302 is locked, and we have an emergency." A shiver snaked down my spine. Tension coiled around me as I exchanged glances with Helen. "I just came from there," I whispered. Panic rushed back as memories flooded back, whispers, shadows, the frantic cries echoing in my ears. I wasn't alone in the hospital anymore. As I gathered my bearings, something kept nagging at me, an insistent pull toward that room, that haunting space that had morphed into something foreign yet familiar. I glanced at the clock. My shift was almost over, but the idea of leaving without knowing more felt wrong. "I'll go," I said abruptly, making my way to the hallway, heart racing. I felt eyes on me as I approached room 302 once more. The door loomed ahead, seemingly untouched, yet my instincts screamed at me to turn back. I paused, wondering what lay on the other side. As I pushed the door open, a strange calm washed over me. The weight of darkness was gone. The room felt brighter, almost like it had been waiting for me. I stepped inside cautiously. The bed sat undisturbed, but this time I saw something new. A journal on the nightstand, old and weathered. My heart raced as I leaned closer, fingers trembling in anticipation. Beneath the dust lay a series of entries, each one filled with pain and sorrow, detailing experiences of hopelessness and fear. "I can still hear them," one entry read, echoing in my mind. The words brought back the cadence of desperate whispers, begging for help. As I read, the memories of the shadowy figure and the woman floated back to the surface. They were not ghosts, but souls, trapped in a cycle of despair. Whatever darkness bound them was deeper than I could have imagined. Just then, sirens blared outside. The atmosphere shifted immediately, tension curling as if the room itself braced for something. I glanced to the door, thinking of my colleagues who were unaware of the realities I had faced just moments before. Focusing back on the journal, I continued reading. It detailed an incident from years past when patients had gone missing from this very room. "The source," I whispered. The woman's voice echoed in my mind, and I understood. The shadows were not simply lost. They were the echoes of lives cut short. Suddenly, the journal slipped from my hands, tumbling to the floor. In that instant, the air thickened, and the whispers filled the space once more, resonating, crying out. "Help us!" I felt the ground tremble slightly. Was this the beginning of some horrific reckoning? This was it. I had to do something. I couldn't leave these souls to linger here, bound by their infinite sorrow. Gripped by determination, I dashed from room 302 and toward the old wing. The hospital felt alive. The shadows lurked in corners, eyes watchful, and I pushed through the weight of dread that threatened to pull me back. I reached the entrance of the old wing. My heart raced as I stepped inside, the air thick with dust and memories, echoes of despair creeping around me. "I have to help you," I called out, my voice echoing against the silence. And then, like a gust of wind, the whispers came, colliding around me, a chorus of souls waiting for release. I felt them rising like a tidal wave, pressing against my chest, filling my lungs. "Please," the voices whispered, "help us." But would I truly be able to? As I ventured deeper into the shadows, the question swirled. What lay ahead, and would I face the darkness again? The boundaries between reality and the unknown blurred with each step I took, every whisper pulling me in. The answers were waiting, yet the only thing I could be certain of was this: the fight was just beginning.